Next thing which we'll need to cover is the shape of the cost curves. So we've covered different types of costs, so let's see how they look on a graph. The easiest and the simplest curve to understand is the total fixed cost line. It's a straight line because they don't change. If we plot all costs along vertical axis, every time in economics, all monetary variables, everything measured in monetary terms, in money, in pounds, is located along vertical axis. Prices, costs, revenue, profit, everything will be located on vertical axis, and output will always be located along horizontal axis. And total fixed cost is simply a straight line because they don't change. Total fixed costs remain unchanged regardless of the level of output. So no matter how much you produce, 0 units or 10 units or 10 million units, there will be certain total costs, fixed costs, which remain unchanged. That's why it's a straight line. Total variable cost line is an upward sloping line which originates at 0 because it shows that variable costs of production increase as you produce more and more output. The more output you produce, the higher your variable costs will become. If you don't produce any output, you don't pay anything for materials, for labor, and your variable costs will be equal to 0. So that's why this curve originates at 0. The more you produce, the higher you will need to pay. Your costs will increase. However, they will not increase at a constant rate. That's why it will not necessarily be a straight line. This curve can have different shapes depending on the technological progress, depending on your production function. But what is important to remember is that it will always originate at 0 and it will be upward sloping. It shows that costs will go up, variable costs, as your output increases. And if you combine these ideas together, you will be able to calculate the total costs of production. Your total cost is a sum of fixed and variable cost. Your fixed cost is a straight line. Your variable cost is an upward sloping line which originates from 0, which means that in order to calculate the total cost of production, you will need to add up these two curves together, which will shift your curve upwards. Let's have a look at this example. This is our fixed cost of production, total fixed cost, which is equal to £2,000. This is how much we spend per month in order to have a running business, in order to work in our pizza shop, in our takeaway shop. And we currently produce, let's say, 1,000 units. And in order to make this many units, we'll need to spend £4,000. This is our variable cost of production, total variable cost. This is how much we've spent on our materials and on our labor. So for our output level and for any output level, total fixed cost will be 2,000 and total variable cost happens to be 4,000. If we add up these numbers together, what is happening, we shift our cost of materials upwards by £2,000, which is the fixed cost. And our combined total will be equal to 6,000 for this particular output level. So fixed cost plus variable cost, altogether it will be £6,000. And it means that we shift every single point on the variable cost line upwards by £2,000. We impose an additional £2,000 on top of whatever amount we have spent on our materials. Regardless of how much we produce, regardless of where we are located, every time we impose an additional £2,000. So strictly speaking, we are shifting the variable cost curve upwards by the size, by the amount of fixed cost. So that is why our total cost line will be parallel. It will repeat the shape of the variable cost line, but it will be located higher by the amount of our fixed cost. So this distance will always be equal to fixed cost because this is an additional cost we have to pay on top of our materials. So hope it's clear. Let's go through another example. Hopefully this will make it even easier for you to understand. Let's imagine that we operate in a certain corner shop or in whatever business, and this is our output level. It changes from 0 units to 7 units. This is our production process. And our total fixed costs remain unchanged. Let's say £12. This is what we are dealing with. So we will plot our cost curves using this data. So total fixed cost will be equal to £12 regardless of the level of output. This is our first cost shown by this green line for green set of data. Now let's add the cost of materials, our variable costs of production. As you can see, variable cost shown by this blue data or navy data will increase the more we produce. If output is 0, quantity is 0, variable cost is 0. When we produce the first unit, we need to pay £10 for our materials, labor, and so on. When we produce 2 units, we'll need to pay £16 and so on. The more we produce, the more we need to spend. If we plot this data, we will get this curve, total variable cost line, and these blue dots represent our particular data points. And if we want to add up all these numbers together, green and blue numbers, we will get the total cost for this company. So 12 plus 0 is 12, 12 plus 10 is 22, 12 plus 16 is 28, and so on. So what is happening here? We are increasing the blue set of figures by 12. In other words, every single point on the blue line will have to shift upwards by £12. That is why our total cost line will repeat the shape, but it will be located £12 higher. It will go up by £12. Total cost line is a line which originates at the amount of fixed cost which we pay, and then it goes next type of cost which we'll need to learn is the average cost or cost per unit. As you remember, to calculate average cost, we take total cost and divide this by quantity. And normally this cost curve has a U shape. In other words, it goes down initially, then it goes up. It's increasing. So there will be some point of minimum for average cost. This is because of the law of diminishing returns, which we are going to cover now.